I just got to show you this.
Everyone in this room is an atheist. Everyone can name a God in which they do not believe. Let them advance the case that the one in which they believe is the superior one. Let Dr. Turek be the first person I've ever met to do that convincingly this evening, and I will show him due respect.
So Dr. Frank Turek and Christopher Hitchens have a debate a number of years ago on the existence of God.
It's not a natural cause. By definition, it must be a supernatural cause, something beyond the natural. In fact, Arthur Eddington, the contemporary of Einstein, who was an expert in general relativity, said, quote, "The beginning seems to present insuperable difficulties unless we agree to look on it as frankly supernatural." So the cosmological argument leaves us with one question. Either no one created something out of nothing, or someone created something out of nothing. The atheistic view is no one created something out of nothing. The theistic view is someone created something out of nothing. Which view is more reasonable? I think Julie Andrews had it right. Nothing comes from nothing. Nothing ever could.
Now, in Turek's opening statement, he talks about an acronym called SURGE, and he goes through different points of why he believes in the Big Bang and that God created it. So Dr. Turek ends his opening statement with these questions. Listen to this.
Christopher has to explain these 8 truths about the universe from an atheistic perspective. He must explain how the universe arose from nothing, how extreme fine-tuning and design arose from chaos, how life arose from non-life, how morality arose from materials, how reason and the laws of logic arose from matter, how mind arose from mud, how mathematics arose from molecules, how human freedom arose from blind repetitive forces, and how consciousness arose from chemicals. If he can't give evidence to explain these truths about reality from an atheistic perspective, if he's just going to state unsupported, speculative possibilities that rely on faith, then I think theism is a more reasonable worldview.
Now, it's very interesting. In Hitchens' opening statement, he says this.
The answer to the question with which we confront ourselves tonight, or are confronted if you prefer, does God exist, is to me, yes, it does. It must do. It must do because it is so real to those who do believe in it. There are people of whom it may be said that for them, God does exist. I've become perfectly persuaded of this by now.
So what I gather from what Hitchens is saying is that you can believe in God if you want to, but just don't make me believe in him because I don't like him. That seems to be the basis of everything from the rest of the debate. Now, I'm going to throw a few other clips up there and you can make your own decision. You can go and watch the whole debate if you like. Just look up Christopher Hitchens, Dr. Frank Turek, debate, does God exist? You'll find it on YouTube. It was posted about 12 years ago. But it's very interesting to watch start from the beginning, but it's 2 hours long, so I'll spare you all the little details. Here's a few little clips.
There is no valid or coherent or consistent argument that would not work if it comes to that for the existence of any God being positively misleading, so that the deist may propose a designer, and I may not be able to show you convincingly that there could be no such person. But the theist has all their work still ahead of them. From this designer, how do we get to the designer who answers prayers? There is no totalitarian solution to these problems. There is no big brother in the sky. It is a horrible idea. It is a wonderful thing. It is a wonderful thing, in my submission, that we now have enough information, enough intelligence, and I hope enough intellectual and moral courage to say that this ghastly proposition is founded on a lie.
And I want to point out that most of what Christopher just said there is pretty much complaints about religion and religious people and has no impact on whether or not God exists. And on the atheistic worldview, here's the main point. How do you define what an atrocity is? Who defines it? Who has the authority to define what an atrocity is? The carbon atom? The benzene molecule? I'm not saying you have to believe in God to be moral. I'm not saying that only religious people are moral. I'm not saying atheists can't be moral. I'm not saying atheists don't know morality. I'm saying there's no way to justify what is right and what is wrong unless there's some authority that provides it. What is the authority? In a materialistic worldview, there is no authority. The carbon atom has no moral authority over you. And it seems that Christopher goes on and on about how he does not want to be under some kind of divine totalitarianism. That is a moral rejection of God.
They're statements of all we know is how little we know. That's been for many years my definition of an educated person. Someone who knows enough to know how ignorant they are. Could we do it two, maybe, and get to their questions?
I have 6.
I'm your witness then.
So 3 was right. Dr. Turek.
Okay.
Christopher, what is your explanation for the beginning of time, space, and matter out of nothing?
Well, we don't know. I remember being asked by one of my children once when I said, well, what was there at the Big Bang? And I said, well, you have to imagine, this shows how poverty-stricken our own vocabulary is, and I suspect how poverty-stricken our own capacity is. In other words, I think there are some things, not that we don't understand or know, but that we cannot. So we're reduced to sort of primitive images. But I said, suppose you could picture all of matter, the whole of matter, condensed into, I got this from Hawking, I think, one of his colleagues, condensed into something like a very small, dense black suitcase of the kind you see people carrying money in crime thrillers. And it's about to fly open. That's what you'd have to be able, and everything that's ever going to be is inside that.
And of course, religious people believe that somebody's going to intervene to stop it before it does go. And even if
they do?
Even if it doesn't,
wait.
hold on.
Sorry.
Even if nobody intervenes, if it goes to heat death, it goes to heat death.
Excuse me. Did the religious among you, ladies and gentlemen, understand? I did not. That there will be an intervention to make an exception in our case. That this will not happen to our cosmos. That God will prevent the heat death.
That's the Christian view, and as I said,
I had no idea.
Yes. That a new heaven and new earth will be created. Genesis is paradise lost. Revelation is paradise restored.
I find it interesting that Hitchens seems to find very eloquent ways of saying, I don't know.
It just isn't it entailed by it? I appeal to the audience. Have I not answered the question about the termination of pregnancy? Which bit have I not answered? You better prompt me then.
I'll read it again. Why is it that according to you, when God plays God by taking a life prematurely?
Well, it isn't according to me. I don't say God does that. Nature does
in your
it.
book, which is right over here, you have an entire chapter about the atrocities in the Old Testament.
Yes.
And the atrocities have to do with God commanding genocide and those things. And you obviously have a problem with that, as many people should. So my question again is, why, according to you, when God plays God by taking a life prematurely in the Old Testament, is it a moral outrage, but when you play God by taking a life prematurely through an abortion, it is a moral right?
Well, once again, I'm sorry if my work is so obscure, but I don't say that I have a moral right to terminate a pregnancy. I've given all the reasons that I think hedge that question ethically and morally very sternly, stringently.
I'm not saying you don't know morality, Christopher. I'm saying you can't justify morality without a being beyond yourself.
So that, so that if I say that for me it's enough to be willing to love my fellow man and perhaps hope that my fellow man and woman will give me some of the same consideration in return, and that...
You're a materialist. I'm trying to ask you, where does morality come from in a materialistic worldview?
Well, did I not just acquit myself of that charge and say that the argument precedes the knowledge of the atomic and molecular structure?
No, it doesn't. No.
Not that I think, by the way, that the atomic and molecular structure is irrelevant, and it could be that we might find out that there are, who knows, pheromones or other phenomena that do have an influence on our moral conditioning. This still wouldn't, to a morally normal person, relieve them of the responsibility of saying that I feel I know what's right. I feel that some things my children don't need to be told. They already know.
If God does not exist, what then is the purpose of life?
Well, I can only answer for myself. What cheers me up? I suppose mainly gloating over the misfortunes of other people. I guess that.
And you say evil comes from religion,
I
huh?
guess that has to be it. I think, yeah, mainly crowing over the miseries of others. It doesn't always work, but it never completely fails. And then there's irony. There's irony, and which is the gin in the Campari, the cream in the coffee. Sex can have diminishing returns, but it's amazing. No, that's pretty much it. And then it's a clear run to the grave. Oh, I thought I'd just wrap.
Oh, well. You can call it a wrap unless you'd like 5 more minutes.
Able to explain any of these realities from an atheistic perspective. They have instead relied on speculation and faith. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Now, there's one more other point. Christopher may think that there is no God and he hates him, but God thinks there is a Christopher Hitchens and God loves him.
So what I gather from this debate is it wasn't really a debate about the existence of God, but it was Hitchens' opportunity to say, this is why I hate God and this is why I think everyone else should believe that as well. And at one point he actually calls people an ignoramus for believing in God. And I just find that's very basic, it's very, it's not academic, and he obviously has something against religion from a personal trauma or something, I don't know, but he just doesn't seem to answer the question. So, you know, given the full opportunity, this academic did not answer the question as to, does God exist? In fact, he actually said that he probably does, and he said he doesn't know. So I guess the question is, what do you think from all of that?